In a quiet suburb, the routine school pickup takes a chilling turn when an ordinary afternoon becomes a battleground of injustice and resilience. As the sun begins its descent, a black mother finds herself targeted by a sudden wave of suspicion. The echoes of racial profiling pierce the tranquility as she navigates a world where her very presence is questioned. With unwavering grace, she confronts the stark reality of prejudice, her strength simmering beneath a facade of calm. But beneath the surface lies a power untamed, waiting to be unleashed. As tensions escalate, bystanders watch in awe as her true essence emerges, challenging assumptions and redefining stereotypes. Join us as we delve into a story of courage and defiance, where one woman's journey through adversity becomes a beacon of hope. As the shadows lengthen, the question lingers: what unfolds when a mother's protective instincts meet a society's biases? Stay tuned as we uncover the startling revelations that redefine this suburban encounter. The uneasy stares from a few onlookers began to shift into hushed whispers. A store employee, glancing nervously from the corner, made a phone call that would change the course of this mother's day. She stood near her car, her young son clutching her hand tightly, sensing the tension in the air, but not fully understanding. The mother's calm demeanor never wavered, but behind her composed exterior, she was replaying every step that had led her to this moment. What had she done to draw this kind of attention? Was it the way she dressed, the car she drove, or simply the color of her skin? The questions ran through her mind, but she had no time for answers. Moments later, the screech of tires broke the uneasy silence. A patrol car arrived, its flashing lights a stark contrast to the warm hues of the fading sun. People began to gather, curiosity mingling with tension. The officer stepped out, his demeanor stern but cautious. The mother took a deep breath, her son still clutching her hand. This wasn't just about her now. This is about protecting him, about standing firm in the face of what was to come. The crowd edged closer, their murmurs growing louder, but no one could anticipate what would happen next. The officer approached cautiously, his gaze fixed on the mother. Her heart pounded, but she stood firm, meeting his eyes with quiet strength. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice steady, though her son's grip tightened on her hand. The officer hesitated, as if weighing his response. Someone from the crowd chimed in, "She didn't do anything." A woman with a stroller stepped closer, her expression a mix of concern and defiance. The tension rippled outward, and soon others in the small group began murmuring in support of the mother. Still, the officer remained firm, asking her for identification and questioning her presence in the area. As she reached into her bag to comply, she couldn't ignore the stares, the unspoken accusations, and the familiar, heavy weight of being judged. But just as the officer glanced at her ID, his expression shifted, confusion first, then something closer to shock. He stepped back, glancing between her and his notepad, as if piecing together a puzzle that didn't make sense. The crowd leaned in, whispers growing louder. What was it about her that unsettled him? What detail had thrown him off balance? The mother said nothing, letting the silence work its way through the crowd, through the officer, through the moment itself. The truth she carried wasn't just a shield. It was something far more powerful, and it was about to change everything. The officer's radio crackled, breaking the silence, but his focus stayed locked on the woman's ID. His jaw tightened as he seemed to wrestle with a realization he wasn't prepared for. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. People exchanged glances, their curiosity mixing with unease. "What's going on?" someone finally asked, stepping closer. The officer hesitated, glancing at the growing crowd, then back at the mother. She stood tall, her eyes unwavering. "Is there a problem?" she repeated, her tone firm but calm. Before he could respond, another officer arrived, his demeanor even more tense. He whispered something to his colleague, and whatever was said caused the first officer to visibly stiffen. The energy shifted, fear mingling with something that felt like respect, or perhaps intimidation. The mother remained silent, her son still by her side, looking up at her with wide, trusting eyes. Suddenly, a man in a suit emerged from the crowd, his presence commanding attention. He walked directly to the mother and addressed her with a quiet but clear urgency. "Ma'am," he said, "I think it's time they know who you really are." The crowd fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone. The officer took a step back, his earlier confidence now replaced with uncertainty. The mother took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, the officers, and finally her son. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about setting the record straight, about standing up not just for herself, but for every mother, every child who had ever been in her shoes. The truth was coming, and it was going to leave everyone stunned. The crowd's anticipation was palpable, the air thick with curiosity and tension. The mother straightened her shoulders, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. Before she could speak, the man in the suit turned to the officers, his tone sharp and commanding. "Do you even realize who you're dealing with?" he said, his voice cutting through the silence. The first officer stammered, We were just responding to a call," but the man held up a hand to silence him. "A call based on assumptions, wasn't it?" he said, "because if you'd done your homework, you'd know this woman isn't just any mother." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, and the crowd leaned in closer, eyes darting between the mother and the man. The mother's son tugged gently at her hand, his small voice breaking through the tension. "Mom, are they mad because of us?" She knelt down, her voice soft but firm. "No, baby. They just don't understand yet. But they will." Just as she stood again, a sharp voice cut through the crowd. "I know who she is," said an older woman, stepping forward. Her face was a mix of fear and admiration. The revelation in her voice sent a ripple of shock through the onlookers. But before anyone could react, a third officer arrived, flustered and visible. The crowd cheered, their voices echoing into the evening. But as Vanessa walked away with her son, the photograph tucked in her pocket, she knew the fight wasn't over, it was just beginning. As Vanessa walked to her car, the crowd slowly dispersed, their voices quieter but their minds undoubtedly buzzing. Her son looked up at her, his innocent eyes filled with curiosity. "Mom, why were they scared of you?" he asked softly. Vanessa smiled gently, brushing a curl from his forehead. "Sometimes people are scared of what they don't understand," she said. "But it's our job to teach them, to show them that we're not just what they see, we're so much more." The man in the suit gave her a nod of respect before disappearing into the crowd. The older woman stayed a moment longer, her eyes glistening as she whispered, "He would have been proud of you." Vanessa's smile grew, a quiet acknowledgement of the history they both carried. Driving away, she glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing the crowd's faces fading into the distance. Her son's hand rested in hers, a reminder of why she stood her ground. Today wasn't just another day. It was a step forward, a victory in a much larger battle. And as the city lights glimmered on the horizon, Vanessa felt a quiet resolve. The work would continue, but for now she had won, not just for herself, but for everyone who needed to see what true power looked like.